For our next presentation, we are going to Bootcamp to unpack sampling's impact with consumer insights. Our speaker is Daisy Mayhoff, Research Director for AMC Global. Daisy, the podium is yours.
Thank you, John, and thank you to CPGmatters for organizing this event, and to all of you for joining and listening in today. As John mentioned, my name is Daisy Mayhoff, and I'm a Research Director for AMC Global, which is a full-service market research consultancy. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how to unpack the impact of sampling and event marketing efforts to optimize the return on this investment for your brand. Product sampling is a great opportunity to quite literally put your brand in front of consumers. Sampling has come up in one way or another in more than one presentation already today. It's a great strategy. People love free stuff, and this approach can have big payouts for brands. The problem is many brands are utilizing product sampling without knowing the payout. So companies are making significant investments in product sampling and event marketing without truly understanding the impact of these efforts or how to make them better. Today, I'm going to dig in on how to get more out of this type of investment by, as we say, unpacking its impact. Then I'll share some tips and tricks about sampling itself that we've learned by partnering with leading brands in this space for years. So, brands are often investing significantly in sampling without understanding what they're getting in return. This is a critical learning gap. Brands are typically relying on sales data to fill this gap, trying to detect a blip that may or may not be related to sampling. In reality, this doesn't get us anywhere near the level of detail we would need to really understand the return on this investment. First of all, sampling is almost always part of broader marketing efforts, right? And typical approaches can't really give us confidence in what wins are specifically attributable to sampling. Plus, brands are, often sampling in various ways, different tactics, different venues. There's a gap in really understanding the specific impact of different executions. You also miss all the color and context of the sample or event experience if you have to rely solely on sales. This is about consumers at the end of the day. And without hearing, from consumers, we can't understand what's working, what's not working, what they like, what they don't like, in order to optimize the execution and have it work even harder for you in the future. And finally, this approach assumes that increased sales is the only positive outcome of sampling efforts, but this isn't really the case. Although increasing sales is often the ultimate end goal, things like raising awareness, especially for smaller brands, or shifting equities are all valid objectives of socializing your brand. So not all sampling is created equal. So not only is sales or a marketing mix analysis approach not detailed enough, it's sometimes not even really the right immediate outcome variable. So we have this learning gap. Current approaches aren't cutting it. What should be filling this gap? The bottom line is, if we want to understand whether this type of marketing is effective, we need a pointed research design. So what should that research look like? That's part of what I'm here to talk to you about today. So with that, let's dig in to best practices for designing sampling research. First of all, what does sampling effectiveness research need to tell us, right? What are the objectives of doing research like this? The overarching goal of a sampling research program should be to unpack the insights that allow us to evaluate the impact that the program's having on our brand and ultimately give us the tools to optimize it moving forward, right? Even if sales or marketing mix was enough to understand whether our sampling had an impact, we still wouldn't know why. We wouldn't know what's that winning combination that made the effort successful, Or if it wasn't as successful as we wanted it to be, how do we optimize it moving forward? So what do we need to understand to meet that objective? First, we should have an understanding of who our sampling efforts reached. If we sampled to a list, were the right people on the list? If we put a sample into a product package, are we just preaching to the choir? Next, we need to understand what consumers thought of their experience. What are their reactions to the event or the sample? If there are concerns, is it about the product? I don't like the taste of this product. Or is it about the sample, something we can fix? The sample was too small. The sample of this drink wasn't cold enough when I got it, etc. These nuances matter and can help us to drive decisions moving forward. In asking consumers what they think, we can also diagnose other aspects of the effort, coupons, messaging, ambassadors, etc. So really understanding the full consumer experience and what worked and what didn't allows us to optimize in the future. Next, we need an understanding of, the million-dollar question, which is, did it work? If we design the right research, we can really answer this question and answer it in a meaningful way. We can learn, do those who receive a sample go on to purchase? And beyond that, are those purchasers actually growing your brand as new users? What were the drivers and barriers to their decision to purchase or not purchase? And once we crunch the numbers, did you really get a return on your investment? So based on what you put in to this sampling effort, does what you got out of it make it worthwhile? And finally, what worked best? So as we mentioned, brands are often executing multiple tactics at a given time. We need to understand which is giving us the most bang for our buck. Is one laundry pod enough to know if you like a detergent? Do you need multiple to build a regimen? Should we distribute our skincare product direct to the consumer or via a derm office? And on and on. So overall, there's a lot to learn and a lot of levers that brands can pull, which is why it's so important to design an approach that can help us hit on each of these elements. So before we talk more about designing the right research approach for evaluating sampling effectiveness, I would like to stop for a pop quiz, a pop poll. If you're able to vote, which of these factors do you think has more influence over sampling success? Your target or your tactic? Who you reach or what, where, and how you do it. See the responses coming in. Close race. Give a couple more seconds for people to weigh in. Okay. There we go. All right. Oh, still coming in. Great. All right, so almost a half and half split, and they're both good answers and both are important, but the most critical driver of success is reaching the right target. So good job to the slight majority. It's really about target. So brands have success with big samples, small samples, coupons, brochures, experiences, etc. But if you try to give diapers to someone without a baby, you're likely not going to have much success no matter how nice your diapers are. So tactic is important. It has nuances of its own, which we'll talk about. But the bigger driver of sampling success is hitting the right target and hitting them in the right moment. So if target is one of the most important parts of sampling success, it makes sense that understanding sampling success would include an understanding of who we reached. So how do we identify who we're reaching with our sampling efforts? In order to answer this question, who we reached, and really in order to effectively answer all of the key questions that we outlined about sampling, we need to go straight to the source. We need to be able to talk directly to our sample recipients or those who had the opportunity to engage with our sampling, our event marketing, The problem here, the hurdle, is obvious, right? Sample recipient. We can't reach them in a traditional research way, like an online survey panel, right? We would never find them. So instead, we need a way to engage with these sample recipients live in market. Being able to talk to real consumers live in market is going to look different depending on your sampling approach, right? But ultimately, your research approach needs to have the flexibility to find these consumers where they are. So at AMC, we do this using our proprietary sample track approach, where we're using patented survey invitations that are customized to the tactic. So sometimes there's product given out alongside samples, et cetera. We've evaluated samples using sample tracks that were given out at events, inside appliances, in healthcare offices, in magazines, in really any of these things here and beyond, you name it, we've been there. But the best practice bottom line here is that you need a way to dive deep with those people who have actually had the opportunity to engage with this marketing in order to understand how it worked. And this means the approach has to be flexible because our ultimate goal then is to reach real sample recipients in the right moment. Okay. When we talk about the right moment, this is another really critical component of best practices in evaluating sampling. But when we talk about reaching right consumers in the right moment, the moment is something else that we need to take into consideration. So what is the right moment? First, we need to be able to talk to sample recipients immediately following their experience to get those rich reaction insights, right? How was their experience with the event, the sample, the ambassadors, et cetera? So talking to them at this immediate touch point is really, it's critical. But it is only half of the story. We also need to be able to understand the impact of the sampling, right? That $1 million question. Did it work? What did it do for my brand? So to answer this, we need to be able to talk to these consumers again later. So this gives us the opportunity to learn, do they remember our brand a month from now? Do they go on to purchase our product, right, if that's our bottom line objective? So best practice in designing research is giving us both immediate insights and giving us those critical impact insights. So we've created this unique and important opportunity to reach real consumers in real markets, in real moments. So now we need to make sure that the research design is customized to give us the right content and the right context. So a few considerations. One question that we're always asking ourselves is, how will we measure impact, right? How will we think about impact? If a core purpose of this research is to tease apart the impact of the sampling, we need to understand how we're going to measure that. Sometimes this means that we're using a test control design. This gives us the context we need to tease apart the true impact of our sampling. So if 30% of our sample recipients go on to purchase, we can't just assume that that's all because of sampling. We need the context, right? So we can use, in some cases, a matched control cell of those who didn't receive a sample in order to really understand what is the lift attributable to our sampling. Similarly, we can go further into impact and understand the impact of those multiple executions that we might be doing, right? If we're sampling our brand in multiple ways, how do we identify what's working the best? So in these cases, we can design a multi-cell research design and define separate sample cells that represent the brand's different approaches. So for example, we did an in-machine sampling study for a laundry detergent brand, and they tested pods, they tested liquid, they tested powder, small sizes, bigger sizes, some with brochures, some with coupons, and all of this across multiple countries. So there's a lot to unpack there, right? The design needs to be set up to give you that nuance and the information that you need, not just to assess the overall impact of sampling, but also understand what works best and how to optimize specific executions moving forward. With the right design, we can also work with brands to, crunch the numbers and understand the specific ROI for the sampling. So going beyond conversion to say, take into account how much the brand invested into a specific tactic compared to what they got out of it. So for that laundry brand, the tactic with the highest conversion was not the tactic that we necessarily recommended moving forward because the cost to produce it actually made the ROI lower than other executions that we tested, right? So ROI goes that one step further beyond conversion. And finally, not to be undervalued, having this custom research design really gives us the opportunity to think about what else can we learn, right? What else can we learn? The big picture of impact is important, but what else can we learn about what drove that impact and what else is going on? And brands can really optimize their executions in big and small ways by having this type of visibility into the consumer experience. We had a brand recently who was using event marketing, and it was this whole theme of an event that really tied back to the story of the brand and the brand history, and people really loved it. They loved the elements of the execution. It was really well done, but the brand got a little too creative and didn't actually include the brand name, as it is today, anywhere in the signage or displays. So brand recall was lower than it should have been, and the research told us why. And the brand was able to use those insights and pivot and change the signage for the next event, right? So these are actionable insights that brands are using to optimize their efforts. All right, so we've discussed best practices for designing research to evaluate sampling. The recap is talking to the right people, reaching them in the right moments, and designing the right approach to make sure that we're providing meaningful content and context. So if we've done all of this research on sampling, then at this point, we must just be able to skip the research altogether, right, and tell you what the perfect sampling program looks like. Unfortunately, it's not quite that easy. The truth is that sampling programs, like the brands that execute them, are extremely unique. So what we have learned there are some core elements that can carry an impact on what success looks like for brands, and part of the magic is really defining success in the right way. So a lot of things at play when we think about both how to define and create sampling success, things like the brand, the category, target, tactic, the cost for us, the cost for the consumer to buy our product, etc. So I'd like to spend the second half of our time together talking about some truths about sampling itself that we've learned over the years. So while there are no hard and fast rules to a perfect program, we'll share some mini case studies that hopefully help bring to life how some of these considerations should really shift how brands are thinking about and creating sampling success. Okay. First, brand and category can have an impact on what works in sampling and also on what working looks like. So brands need to keep these things in mind as we define expectations for success. So, for example, sampling is often executed with the goal to convert purchase, right? And more specifically, brands are often particularly interested in converting new purchasers to a brand. So, as you might imagine, new user conversion tends to be highest for new brands or smaller brands, right? There's inherently more room for growth in these situations. So the expectation guardrail here is if you're sampling a big brand, you need to have realistic expectations for new user conversion. So the mini case study example we have here is that a skincare client sampled 2 of their brands using the same tactic via derm offices. One brand was a category leader, big name, you would have heard of them. The other was one of their smaller, more premium brands. More consumers, the majority of consumers in fact, went on to purchase that big brand following the sampling experience. But the new user conversion was lower because there's fewer new users for this brand to pull in. So does that mean that sampling big brands isn't worth it? We shouldn't sample well-established brands? Absolutely not. Sampling established brands can still be very effective. It can keep the brand top of mind, re-engage lapsed users, push specific tangible equities, promote loyalty, combat switching behavior. So the key is to set the right expectations for what success means in these cases. So for example, it may be more appropriate to think about overall post-sample purchase or a broader definition of new users. The bottom line is that the brand carries an impact, and defining success in a meaningful way is an important part of the puzzle. So category also comes into play here. One example of a way that a category is, impacting sampling success is that categories with long purchase cycles can sometimes struggle with triggering post-sample purchase, especially if they don't intercept consumers at the right moment in that purchase cycle. So, even if consumers really enjoy their sampling experience, it can be tough to have a run out and buy effect on people for something that they just truly don't need in that moment. So the case in point here, we do a lot of work with alcoholic beverage clients, including spirits, and oftentimes spirit brands are engaging with consumers at non-premise events. It is possible that I made up the word non-premise, but it's basically other venues for distributing alcohol. So not on-premise at a bar or a restaurant, and not off-premise at a retailer that sells alcohol to take home. When we say non-premise, we're referring to sampling at events like concerts, art festivals, food festivals, etc. And what we've seen is that in these situations, conversion potential may be more limited. So more specifically, across the recent studies we did that fit this bill, there was essentially no lift in conversion following sampling, and this was true across big brands and small brands. And when we ask consumers why they haven't gone on to purchase, many are saying, because I haven't purchased any spirits or this type of spirit recently. I just don't need any right now. I haven't been shopping for that recently. And this really speaks to the category and that purchase cycle as one of our key hurdles. So, if you sample a snack brand in an event, most people will likely be buying snacks the following weekend at the grocery store, but that's not the case with every category. So I can't make my product's purchase cycle shorter, so how do I overcome a built-in hurdle like this? One way is by, having a focus on reaching the consumers at the more likely to be at the point in the purchase cycle where they need to buy soon. So for spirits, this might be, at the liquor store or store that sells your product. The bottom line best practice is meeting consumers where they are in the journey for your category. That will help to optimize your sampling effectiveness. In the same way, brands tend to have more success with conversion when they design their sampling to reach consumers at natural trigger points, right? Such as life changes that create needs for a new product or a new category. So the classic example of this is offering diaper or formula samples to new moms. So I have a 1-year-old at home, and creating a baby registry triggers brands to send me coupons, and I, in the beginning would leave the pediatrician's office with samples of formula and other things. So, it's useful and a popular strategy to make sure that you're reaching consumers as they have the need, and that can really improve our sampling success. Okay? This brings us to tip 2, which is that hitting the right target with our sampling is critical. So per the earlier poll, target really reigns supreme in terms of successful sampling. And this is part of why sampling toward those life triggers is so successful, right? They're inherently designed in a way that makes them more likely to reach target consumers. So how do we find, as a brand, how do we find the right consumer? One way that brands are reaching their target is sampling direct to consumers via lists. And this can be a great approach, but it's not perfect, and not all lists are created equal, right? So on the heels of my classic new mom example, here are 2 new mom examples that had very different outcomes. And the lesson here is, in order to reach the right consumer in the right moment, our list needs to be accurate. So in this case, on the left, a formula brand used a list purchased from a third party, which should have included moms of babies who were 6 to 12 months old. Turns out the list was actually reaching a much broader target than expected, including moms with much older children, well into juice phase, soda phase maybe, did not need formula, and those samples went to waste. And formula, I don't know if you know, is not cheap, so wasted samples meant that ROI was in the red for this execution. On the other hand, a diaper brand wanting to target moms who were entering potty training phase used an internal list, and the list was spot on. They had good intel. And this was a great way to leverage an internal list, because although these moms may have engaged with the diaper brand before, potty training is a new trigger, a point of change when new decisions are made, and so this is a really strategic way to leverage what you know about your consumers without preaching to the choir. So you're keeping them in the brand, re-engaging them at a critical touch point, which in this case drove strong conversion. Okay. Sometimes with Target is like a brand's whole question or whole purpose in their sampling program. In this example, a leading personal care brand sent free products to potential consumers at 2 different age points, 16 and 18. And their question, beyond whether the effort was a success in general, was which age is the best age when it comes to converting new users to our brand. And what we found was that the 18-year-old samples were less successful because these folks were more likely to have more responsibility for their own purchases in this category, less mom and dad purchase, and therefore more concerned about the price of the products. They're spending their own money, and so price was more likely to be a barrier, and fewer went on to buy. So, if we look at the information we're getting here, we can't get dynamics like parent purchase or even just barriers to purchase via traditional evaluation methods. This is the gap. If a brand is going to invest in mailing out, thousands or millions of personal care products in a year, they need to have the depth to understand whether it worked, whether it was worth it, and which approach worked best and how to make it work even better. Okay. So we've talked a lot about CPG brands so far, but the truth is healthcare and consumer healthcare are among the biggest categories for product sampling. Sometimes these tactics are direct to consumer, but many times healthcare brands are leveraging their professional partners, healthcare providers, to distribute samples to their patients. This is a way that brands are trying to use sampling best practices by getting one step closer to their target. Not sure if I mentioned this, but target is really important. So for this reason, among other reasons, professional sampling can be very effective. However, one truth that we've learned is that things can start to go sideways once you add a middleman, right? So once samples are in the hands of professionals, brands can lose visibility and control over the distribution process. So we've seen this pan out in a lot of different ways. We've seen slow sample distribution when samples were lost or stuck in storage. We've seen samples placed in a bowl on a table rather than handed out by professionals. A bonus pro tip, samples delivered via professionals are often more likely to result in conversion. So when the doc gives you the product, there's a recommendation there, whether overt or implied, that can boost brand credibility and the success of the sampling. But sometimes that's not happening, and they're just sitting on a table. We've seen, multi-part sample packs that get broken apart, and the consumer only gets part of what you thought you were giving them, et cetera. And one big one, and the one that I'm double-clicking on here, is that we have seen our share of generous healthcare providers who distribute multiple samples to each consumer. And this makes for limits the overall reach, the overall number of consumers that we reach with our sampling efforts. So such was the case with this example of a major toothpaste brand who was trying out different sampling tactics via dentists and hygienists. The brand had a few different tactics. One was little sachets, the foil packets of toothpaste. In some cases, they were using the small tubes of toothpaste like you would buy for travel. And in some cases, they were just full out giving tubes of toothpaste like you would buy for your home. As you can imagine, the sachets were very inexpensive to produce, and they did drive post-sample purchase. However, the research was able to uncover that dentists were giving at least a handful, which diminishes the unique reach, right? So all of these sad gray people on the right-hand side didn't get any toothpaste because the pink people got a whole bunch of toothpaste. So in turn, despite low upfront investment for the sachets, the ROI, the return, was weaker for this tactic. So regaining this visibility can really help us to optimize efforts moving forward and unpack what's effective, what's not, and why. Okay. Next, much like a healthcare provider's recommendation can strengthen a healthcare sampling effort, a brand ambassador has the potential to have a positive impact in the CPG space. So during event sampling, conversion rates are often higher among recipients that have interactions with brand ambassadors. And one universal truth that we can share beyond ambassadors themselves being a great tool is that it's always better when your brand ambassadors are trained and given specific strategic talking points. This will help consumers get more out of the interaction, help them get what you want them to get out of the interaction, and in turn, your brand gets more out of your sampling effort. So 2 contrasting real brand examples to bring this point home. On the left, a chocolate-covered snack brand with the goal of driving purchase participated in a sampling tour where multiple brands all travel to different events and set up tents or trucks or what have you to engage with consumers and give out samples or swag. So our snack brand partner tossed a bunch of snack samples into refrigerated cases that consumers could just grab. So those were sort of peppered around the space. But they also had brand ambassadors in a tent handing out samples there. So these brand ambassadors were given a pre-sampling tutorial, specific list of talking points, basically a script. Ultimately, those who got their samples from an ambassador and had that conversation were significantly more likely to convert to purchase, and they also scored the brand higher across the core equity dimensions that were part of the ambassador's talking points. On the contrary, on the right, we had a bourbon brand who wanted consumers to think of their label as something delicious to mix. They were working to expand occasions, expand target, and in this case, the brand ambassadors were given a very basic, high-level overview of the brand objectives, but were not trained on the product or given any specific talking points. I was at this event, one of these events. The brand ambassadors were very friendly, very engaging, successful in getting folks to try the drinks, but they hadn't been told what to say, and the conversations, therefore, were fairly casual, focused on what samples were available versus anything about the brand itself. In turn, only 10% of our sample recipients mentioned anything about a mixable brand in their recall of the conversations they had with brand ambassadors. And the ratings for mixability of the product were flat, whether people talked to a brand ambassador or not. So the ambassador wasn't helping to communicate this core objective at all. So even though, mixability was really an end goal of the sampling efforts, we were falling short by failing to fully utilize one of our key assets, which was brand ambassadors. Okay. And finally, the magic of coupons. Who doesn't love a good coupon? In general, coupons are always or usually a plus. But much like sampling itself, the impact can vary based on the situation. So a few quick coupon truths. First, they often help with conversion. Simple but true. This is an example of a snack brand who sampled. They had a tactic where they just sampled the product and one where they sampled the product and provided a coupon, and the coupon significantly increased conversion success. So the coupon helped. This is one of many examples that we've seen where this was the case. However, it's not universal. So one context in which coupons can be, the impact can be less dramatic are in categories where coupons are already readily available. So with that, we are back to diapers. As if I didn't have enough diapers in my life with a 1-year-old at home, I can't stop talking about them today. So in a heavily promoted category like diapers, the immediate impact of a coupon is likely to be less dramatic. So such was the case in this diaper study where conversion was fairly flat across those who did or did not recall receiving a coupon. However, we still recommended including it moving forward. It's a heavily promoted category for a reason. price is a category driver, and many of those who did recall the coupon did use it when they went on to purchase. So the overall conversion impact wasn't as dramatic, the coupon didn't hurt, it wasn't costing the brand much to include, so it still was recommended as a potential value add. So when deciding what kind of coupon to use, just one more little tip, we've seen that a high-value coupon can sometimes take the place of a physical sample. So high value, like offering a totally free product, is basically saying, here, try our brand for free, no risk, which is effectively a sample for the consumer, right? So we've seen this many times. The example here is a dish detergent brand who tried various tactics, including putting a small bottle of the detergent with the purchase of a dishwasher in machine versus just a coupon for a free bottle. And the two tactics drove about equal conversion for the brand, so it's just as successful to just give them a coupon for a free product. However, the fine print on the coupon does matter, so asking consumers to take multiple steps, including buying multiple products, specific products, can lead to compliance issues, which can minimize the impact of the coupon overall. So the example here is $1 off a tube of toothpaste versus a whole free tube if you buy a brush, but we saw better results with the no strings attached $1 off than with the free tube contingent on an additional specific purchase. So we've all been there, right? We want to buy, we think we're going to get a discount on cereal, but you have to buy every type of cereal that they've ever made in a 64-ounce box. So, you can't make consumers work too hard because compliance can impact your coupon success. Okay? So that's a wrap. That's all the secret sauce I have for you today. The recap is sampling can be a great investment, so don't miss the opportunity to increase your return on that investment. You can and should be evaluating and optimizing your sampling efforts. Otherwise, you're just giving away free stuff. So if there's any questions, I can take those.
Sure. There are a couple of questions that have come up. One, any experience using targeted digital download to card coupons for free full-size product versus in-store demos with cents off coupons?
We've definitely done research on, digital coupons, versus other types of coupons. I don't have necessarily a data point for this specific A versus B example. I think, what we have seen is like the free full-size product, right? That high value coupon can often be more effective. So I don't know, if the format would necessarily change that. I think that, a high value coupon can be a strong strategy in general.
Okay, another question. For food, drug, mass, how can you interface with consumers on demo days when the demo companies refuse to give you a schedule of execution dates at specific stores?
That
That's an
sounds
interesting question.
how can you interface with consumers when they refuse to give you a schedule? That sounds like you might need a new demo company.
That's true.
So
That's a good answer.
We work with a lot of CPG brands and their demo partners and sampling partners, and we are able to use research to sometimes help to unpack that piece of it, right? How is the demo company doing, and how is that aspect of the sampling impacting the success of your sampling? But if that sounds like a pretty straightforward. Sounds like you don't need research to know that they are not potentially the best partner.
Okay. Last question, a real-world question here. Can you share your thoughts on incidental sampling that has occurred during COVID? I usually buy Coffee Mate hazelnut. I go to the shelf and Coffee Mate is out of stock, so I buy International Delight. Do you believe this creates evoke sets? How should Coffee Mate pursue customers that have tried other brands, and how should International Delight try to keep new users?
Yeah, that's a great question. The shopping environment that we're in, in COVID, post-COVID, has definitely created sort of this, incidental, accidental sampling environment, right? So we have availability reigning supreme over brand, even over price, which is giving consumers these opportunities to interact with new brands. So just like intentional sampling efforts, this can create, changes in purchase behavior that could stick moving forward. Will it be permanent? That's the million-dollar question, and one that we're actively working on with a lot of our clients. So we're doing a lot of, custom research right now about the shifts that have been a product of COVID and, whether those are going to stick, and how brands are going to need to pivot, both with sampling in general, as well as with dynamics like this, where, we have switching even in places where loyalty used to be strong. So I think the same, complex factors that go into intentional sampling will be in play here. So this is a great opportunity, I guess, to do that research and try to find out what this is going to look like moving forward.
Okay, excellent. Very good job on this topic. I found it very interesting, and I hope our audience did too. To follow up with Daisy, you can reach out to her. You see on the screen, you can call her, you can email her, you can follow her on Twitter, and you get all the information you need about this topic. So thank you again, Daisy. Good job.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.